Welcome to WNPJ's Weaving the Web. We're really learning a lot about technology. I'm Dina Eccles, and our guest today is Stefania Sani of World Beyond War, Madison. And she's going to speak on war tax resistance. We're going to begin with a short video that explains war tax resistance.
It's a joyous thing to do, to try to follow what you believe and not hold on to things so much that you feel trapped.
The greatest changes in history have only come when people are willing to put everything on the line.
There is no sound.
They stole my image to sell products, and I don't endorse products. I don't know, 3 months or so before we settled, I found out that the United States government wanted a percentage of that, even though I was giving away 100%. And I was really struggling with it. And then leading up to the invasion in Iraq, I was part of the hundreds of thousands in downtown San Francisco helping shut down the financial district. And I just got this pit in my stomach, and I actually started to cry because I thought about all the people who are out there for the day financially feeding the very same system they were out there protesting. And I thought, we get out here in the streets, we make our big brouhaha, we go home, we click the remote, and we complain that our country hasn't changed very much and that the media is not portraying us the way we want. And partly it's because we feed the same system we complain against through our money. And I just realized I could not, in clear conscience, give a penny of the money from the lawsuit to the IRS and to the United States government. So I made the choice that I was going to become a war tax resistor, and then I began doing lots of research, talking with various people who've been a part of the movement, learning from them and their experiences, what's worked, where the challenge has been, talk to legal advice, trying to figure out how to set up my life in such a way that I could continue to generate income and contribute it to the issues and the organizations that I care about, and continue to live and survive in this country. And so that's actually what began the process of becoming a war tax resistor.
Anytime that the check amount doesn't really match exactly with what your tax form is, somebody have to handle manually. So there is always a chance that, a human is reading the letters, and we, in a letter, trying to encourage the person to join us.
We always say we encourage you good folks at the IRS to join us in this protest.
I think it's not a bad idea to start out as, with the phone tax or with a small amount of income tax, just because it sort of gradually gets you into, the consequences and what might happen. And it gives you time to sort of adjust to those IRS letters that do come. I mean, I do file. I make a taxable income and I file and refuse to pay. And I do pay state income taxes.
I'm not refusing to pay my taxes. I'm redirecting my taxes because I know that the good we could do collectively with our money could be so incredible. And likewise, the opposite is true. The horrific things that we're doing with our money breaks my heart and goes against my conscience. So I cannot, in good conscience, pay you this money. But just know that I'm paying the money where our taxes should go. And at any time that you decide to put our money there, I'll be happy to start paying my taxes again.
I'm not against taxation. I believe that the government has a responsibility to collect for the common good. And I don't even fault the IRS in this. To me, it's not they're not the ones I'm protesting against. It's they're another pawn in the system that collects this money and turns it over to the Pentagon.
I guess my attitude toward war tax resistance, I mean, it's no different from my attitude toward ethical action in general. I'm just constantly trying to figure out what are my choices? What have I assumed that isn't true?
No sound.
Acts which are in violation of criminal laws under the Internal Revenue Code, but they're rarely prosecuted. What people don't really know and understand is that most criminal acts never result in criminal prosecutions.
The IRS has a huge collection process that lasts for years. And at every stage of that collection process, the war tax resistor has a choice about what to do. So that's why I believe that it's really a one step at a time kind of thing. And that imagining the worst possible consequences before you even begin the process is paralyzing. And it doesn't let your conscience struggle with doubts one by one.
The fact that they seized the money from me instead of me giving it to them voluntarily, it just more accurately represents the kind of relationship I feel I have with the government.
Yeah.
And so I think even though eventually they got the money, I'd rather they get it this way than me just going ahead and handing it to them.
War tax resistance is civil disobedience.
Yeah.
And if done well and done right, it should create conflict.
Yeah.
Again, I think of the women in Gaza, I think, okay, my life's a whole lot easier than the women in Gaza. If something happens as a result of my war tax resistance, so be it.
I must say that my feeling is that I can't make anybody do anything. I'm there, I try to testify, whatever, but the big thing is that I do what I can and what I believe. For me, that's the big thing.
Definitely an idea that needs to take off because we keep feeding the machine otherwise. We keep feeding these complexes, these military industrial complexes that we hate and we cry about all the time. But I just was trying to look at my life and make all the things that I do and what I believe in connect or as connected as best as possible and still live and move around in the world. Hopefully out of this project, I'll be able to become more articulate and also just collectively we'll be able to have a stronger base. So when we present these ideas to folks, it doesn't seem like something that's happening in these tiny margins, but that it's moving closer to the mainstream. And then we can actually make some real demands on the government of, what we need and how we'd like this money to be spent.
It just seems like such a common sense approach to somebody asks you to pay for something that you think is completely against your self-interest, the good of the planet, your values. Why cooperate with that?
Okay, that's the video that gives us an introduction into war tax resistance. All the material that I'm presenting here comes from the National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee. And if Erica can put the second picture in, it has the website. But if you can't, I will write it that website in the chat as soon as I'm done here. From now on, I'll call the National Coordinating Committee NUTRIC for short. That's how I'll refer to it for brevity. And I encourage you to go to the website to get direct information from people who have practiced and studied it for years and years. Chances you will find information that fits you and your family situation. On the website, there are really tons of resources. One of them are 8 pamphlets called Practicals that address different situations from, if I am an employee, what do I do? If I'm an employer, if I'm a self-employed person, if I'm retired. So there are 8 categories of people on how they could deal with in their decision to do tax resistance. So tax resistance is an act of civil disobedience and it is punishable under the income tax code. Newtrick collects the cases, refers to them, and keeps a history of the outcomes. And that is a somewhat inaccurate record because of the privacy, and people don't want to go public about this, and more on this later. So, but when Nutri talks about the history of war tax resistance, they mean the way the IRS has reacted in the last 30 years. The question now is about the current administration, and nobody knows. People mention that with the downsizing happening, the IRS may be less able to follow individual cases, but others point at the glee with which the government attacks randomly, viciously, and I'll leave it at that. So with all that said, I want to highlight 3 of the points that they're being made in the video. One is the spectrum of tax resistance. And if you can put up that picture, that would be great. So we usually think of tax resistance. Oh my God, what can I do? That's scary, and it is scary. But there are several levels that one can start with, as one of the witnesses said there. So to get used to that. The first one is the simple living, which is to have an income that is under the taxable amount. And I feel that is, we all live pretty simply. A lot of us do, but at the same time, we have a house and we have a pension, and so I don't know. I try to target and to address this to people that have, that they make more than the taxable income. So this is the www.nwtrcc.org. This is the website. And maybe with the QR, you can go on it too. But if you can put the other picture on, that would be great. So the next level is to pay the taxes that you owe, but at the same time send that objection letter, and that is, it's a way to let them know that you disagree with that, with what they're doing with the money. The next one is to refuse a token amount, and some people just 5% or whatever, and they send that in with that objection. Here it is, with the objection letter. As you see, I made this. I have not been able to figure out how to make a slide with Canva or something. But anyway, so the next one is to refuse the military portion. And that there are several evaluation of that. What is the military portion? Somebody talks about 45%, 50%, 60%, and all the way up to 80%. And then you can send that objection letter with that. And Newtrick on the website does have sample of objection letters. The next level is to refuse all federal income taxes, because in the next one, somebody even refused to pay income taxes because there is overlaps between between funds, these government funds, and also. And there's no way to figure out that no money is going to the military. So some people refuse federal income tax completely. Other refuse the state too, because, for instance, the National Guard and things like that. And the last one is the people who even refuse to file, which is considered a federal criminal misdemeanor. So as you see, where you fall on this spectrum is really your personal decision. And again, Newtrick keeps track of as many cases of tax resistance as they're disclosed to them. The website stresses that the experience are by no means standard. Every case is different, much dependent on the very agent that administers your case. There is, Paula Rogge is a local activist, and she is a lifelong war tax resistor, and she talks about an experience that she had in Austin, Texas, where she really developed this relationship with her agent, with her tax agent that kept on calling her and fine. I mean, it's not that she wasn't. I mean, she was punished anyway, but at the same time, this guy slowly seemed to understand what she was trying to do. So just familiarize yourself with all of these aspects. It's important to understand, though, that declaring tax resistance is not a cliff you throw yourself off from. Upon not paying your taxes, you start receiving warning letters from the IRS. And yes, the IRS charges interest on the amount you owe from the time you were supposed to pay, plus a penalty. So unless you fall in the simple living category of resistors, your resistance will cost you money. Again, it's a personal decision. But at any point of the interaction with the IRS, you can choose to reverse course and pay. The cliff, so to speak, has terraces. If you continue to refuse, then you'll start incurring more painful consequences. You can find the individual stories since the 1990s and a historical overview of resistance on the website. Please refer to that. In general, though, I'm told that there have been no cases of imprisonment and no seizures of cars since the 1990s. But your wages, and Paula Rogge had, that was one of her, the problem that she incurred, and her car was seized. And because she's a doctor, she really needed the car. So the community around her in Austin got together and they bought that car for her. So, an example of solidarities. So, but your wages, your Social Security, your savings, your properties, the IRS has access to all of it under a program called Federal Payment Levy. Newtrick has counselors whom you can speak with to talk about your specific situation. The point I'd like to emphasize here, though, is what was already mentioned in the video. Don't let yourself be scared away from this form of opposition just because you are legitimately scared. Inform yourself, study the different layers of risk, insert your personal situation in each one of them. Consider your right to be represented because you pay taxes. You might find that there is an option you can pursue that does not mean ruin for you and your family. So in practicing publicly, Juanita Nelson in the video says, all I can do is to take a stand on my own. Yet we're all empowered and inspired by the actions of others. I understand that my action, or even a collective action here of all of us, are only symbolic. But I'm inspired by the hope to help making this kind of opposition not a fringe issue, to show people that it is possible to do it. And personally, for instance, I have informed Tammy Baldwin of my decision in another effort to stress the mounting pressure of the moment, the need to be courageous, bold, and creative. So this is that's a presentation. I can say that Newtrick had a conference, a national conference, this past weekend that I took part with. And there were some guest speakers. One was this group called Choose Democracy.us that they believe that we are in an administrative coup. And they have launched a campaign called Tax Strike, a national tax strike, which basically, it encourages everybody to use this system. The other one was an outfit called Taxpayers Against Genocide, that focused specifically on Gaza, of course. And beside tax resistance, they have partnered with National Lawyers Guild to submit a report to the UN Human Rights Council and the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights with evidence that the US is participating in a genocide. So that's it from me. Glad to answer some questions, but really the website is your best place to familiarize yourself with the material.
Well, thank you for taking the time to learn and to get active in all of this. It's so important. I'm really glad we're doing it. I'm glad WNPJ is willing to put this video out so that people can learn more. Are there any specific questions? I mean, I love the fact that everybody can at least send a letter along with their taxes.
Yes.
Some of us still haven't sent them in yet. So, I think this is really great. It's just, it's another step that people can take. And
I'm also, thank you so much for the grid to see what all the different options are, Stefania. I think that was very useful. I like seeing what percentage of the military, those percentages, that was very interesting. I know when you do joint taxes, your partner has to agree. So sometimes I think then that other option is to consider doing separate, instead of a joint tax, you could do a separate tax. And that puts you maybe into a whole different tax bracket anyway. And so then you could decide on your own how you want that distributed. So that was one thought I had. I just felt like the film too was very meaningful to talk about. Don't be so afraid. I know of people who have been doing, they don't pay the phone tax as one small little thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
About that is actually not possible anymore. That's an old information. And I'm explained that it's because that tax was on long distance calls.
Oh, yeah.
When people, so if you still have a landline with a contract for long distance, then that is tax. But on our phones, it's not it. So that is not able anymore. Yeah, you can't do that. The spectrum is something that Paula showed me, and that is really something that I'd like to make it better, because that's something that people really focused on and made me focus on it. Because of those steps.
Yeah, because I think, like one man in the film suggested, he wants to pay taxes for other things.
Right.
So to be a total tax resistor would be difficult for me, because I wouldn't support the things that I love then. Maybe I could donate.
Well, yeah, and I did not talk about that, but there is, part of all of this is the redirection of taxes.
Right.
And I haven't, Paula and I did do something and redirected some taxes together. We gave a small amount to an outfit called Madison Street Medicine. I think that was the only organization that accepted publicly. Because all the other, we reached out to a lot of organizations. You know, we wanted to focus on food and you know, local things, and we got responses after responses that said no, we have to lay low, we cannot do that. So I mean, that's the other thing, the redirection, which is really interesting. But you know, at one of the presentations that I gave, there was this one woman who came up with a question for, and at that presentation, Lincoln Rice, who is the national coordinator, had joined us. And she asked him what he thought about um, um, you know, having, for instance, because after 10 years, whatever you, it has a statute of limitation. So the IRS at this point cannot levy you from taxes that are 10 years old.
10 years.
And so this woman asked, what about if we are 10 people, 10 families, and each one of us resists 1 year,
Yeah.
and then we wait, you know, 10 years, and that gets dropped off, but the other person keeps on. So, and Lincoln said, oh, I've never heard of that, but that's interesting.
That's creative.
Yeah, creative. Yeah, yeah. And one more thing that you made me think about, Judy, you know, that video is a shortened version that Greta Miller helped me to put together.
Oh,
The
okay.
video that they have on the website is much longer, too long. But there are other testimonies, and one of those that really interested me was this woman saying that doing tax resistance is in exercises in being comfortable with uncertainties.
Mhm.
And that is something that really attracts me, because I think about the uncertainties of people in Gaza, in Sudan, you know, wherever. And so that is, I welcome trying to practice that uncertainty of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to us.
Yeah, I agree. That person in the film that mentioned that, what a small thing this is for me to be uncertain about if a
Right,
tax man's going to call versus a bomb coming through my roof here, like
exactly,
they're experiencing. It's just
exactly.
horrific what's happening, and oh yeah, mild inconvenience. Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Judy, I really appreciate you bringing that up. And Stefania, thank you, because the spectrum really shows us that we each can play a role, like maybe starting in areas of comfort and then moving into other zones. And I see a lot of intersectionality between that and the BDS movement. And so I just wanted to say thank you to Stefania for really highlighting that and for the resources as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And did you want to speak a little bit about BDS, Erica? While we have this great video, it'll be wonderful to.
Absolutely. Just had to get myself off of mute there. I think that this is a critical time for many of us, and there are some opportunities for solidarity. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight, and I can run from Stefania, what you presented into some of these other opportunities as we wrap up this session for Weaving the Web too, is to be able to look at solidarity with the folks who are most impacted, not only in Gaza, but also here. So some of the folks who do not file taxes, not out of resistance, but out of economic security, for those of us that live below the poverty line. and don't file taxes because to do so would either be financially difficult for us or just frankly isn't necessary for people who are under that $10,000 to $12,000 per year income. And I think that would be an opportunity to branch with some of the other WNPJ member groups who focus on the Poor People's Campaign, or folks who have in our religious communities who have taken vows of poverty or vows of, just living only within right livelihood. And so there are a lot of opportunities, even here in the state, to work together to send a message to our lawmakers here in Wisconsin, as well as federally, what that looks like. I don't know if those of you who are watching this video have seen, but the governor of Illinois just took a very strong stance and called for resistance for the first time in his personal or political career. And I believe that we have a governor who is mostly aligned with some very distinct pieces about how we fund our military and our service people. So without getting too nuanced, I did just want to use a moment to call to attention that here in Wisconsin, the state assembly currently has many bills that are addressing our rights in terms of boycotting, speaking out, being that voice of resistance. As recently as, and I'm just going to make sure I want to try to get this information correct, but my understanding is as recently as yesterday, there was a large push in the Joint Finance Committee. They're actually meeting today in about 7 minutes as well, where the budget proposal that's before us would eliminate a number of really critical services for peer support and mental health and Medicaid. And while we can't at this point draw back our taxes and say, I'd like what I've already paid back if you're not going to support these things, it is an opportunity to show up. Again, in addition to writing a letter with your taxes, there are, and I'll be forwarding this to be posted, there's a number of different senators and representatives to contact to voice your opinion and to be able to say, yeah, I can't get my taxes back, but nor should you spend them on these cuts or on these other things. Right now, there is a massive threat in Wisconsin. Assembly Bills 88 and Assembly Bill 34 are essentially weakening some of our people protections for anyone involved in protesting, anyone who wants to, organize a rally, anyone who wants to participate in this resistance in ways that are not necessarily even tax related, but are bodies on the ground related. So just to be aware that there are a couple of options that we have in this really overwhelming time when there are so many different ways that we're going to be called on to resist. I do want to do a plug for the app called Resist Bot. It gives 5 different options every day that people can do from their phones that range from both state, local, and state, all the way up to the federal level. I believe that there's also an app. I don't know the name exactly, but I believe it is just called BDS app. I'm going to have to look into our boycott app. And Dina, I see you shaking your head, so maybe you know that specific name. But trying to find ways that we can use technology to stay connected, to stay resistant. Let's not comply consensually before we're forced to do so. I think that's really what I took away from this tax resistance piece and where it has applications in other forms of boycott. So I just wanted to plug that again today, 1 p.m., the Joint Finance Committee, state of Wisconsin, is meeting to strip away some essential programs from the budget. And this is a time where while we can't take back money we've already paid, we can voice our opinion about how it should be spent going forward. And I think that's going to be incredibly helpful, especially in those intersections, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, where we look out for and protect each other, where there are forms of mutual aid about how people are affording food and medical and basic daily needs. And so to be able to use our voice in resistance there is going to be really critical. Because we know that later on in the line, if we don't speak out now, they will come for it, and they've definitely shown us that we are stronger together. So that's my overview, my plug to get involved.
Great. Thank you so much, Erica, for bringing all that in. And that's one of the biggest things that we can do, and that's what WNPJ does so well, is to educate, to bring forward differing ideas and organizations that are resisting and helping in some ways, mutual aid, whatever we can do for one another right now. It's an amazingly critical time. So that's very helpful, that information, and it's wonderful to be able to, hopefully the video will work and be sent out and you'll all appreciate this. And the next Weaving the Web will be, I believe, the first Thursday in June, the 5th of June. We're not sure quite what we'll be doing then, but you can count on the fact that someone will be here. And Stefania, thank you so much for all the work you've done and for sharing it. Yeah, really great, really great. So, so that's it. We'll just wrap it up now.
Thank you.